A major update on the professional wrestling future of CM Punk amid reports he may never wrestle again with his impending AEW departure. Plus, we've got an update on Hangman Page. Tonight is Dynamite, and reportedly, according to Brian Alvarez, there is something big that is scheduled to take place that's going to get the whole wrestling world talking. Chris Jericho is set to defend his Ring of Honor World Championship against the former ROH champion. We've got an update on that. Renee Paquette, has she taken AEW to the next level? According to Tony Khan, she has, and Jim Ross provides us with a health update. Hey guys, welcome back to Wrestling News 365. Hope everyone is doing very well. As always, there are plenty of news stories to get into in the world of All Elite Wrestling. It's Wednesday. You know what that means. It's AEW Dynamite live on TBS. And man, we've got some big stories as we're just hours away from Dynamite going live on the air. So let's get straight into this one. First, let's talk about CM Punk. A possible future for Punk in professional wrestling. Is he done? Is the former two-time AEW World Champion done with AEW? Seemingly, but is he done with pro wrestling? Well, according to a report from Fightful Select, Sean Ross Sapp is writing that they have not heard from CM Punk firsthand in the 2 months since the incident at All Out. The All Out media scrum and much more went down, though we have heard, and Fightful are reporting that they have heard from people close to him. Both Fightful and Wrestling Inc. have recently published stories detailing a side of the story closer to Punk after his 1-year return to wrestling came to a head with other members of the AEW roster. Of course, Punk sustained an injury that required surgery in the main event of All Out, a torn triceps, and would have been sidelined for several months regardless of any incident, any fight, any brawl. But since then, there's been talks of buyouts, litigation, and other things. So Fightful have released this report today, and it kind of breaks down a lot of these rumors and innuendo surrounding CM Punk. Fightful is confirming Wrestling Inc.'s report that there isn't any active litigation towards CM Punk from AEW side, from any of the other people involved in the brawl out. Last week, Fightful reported that the Elites were imminently set to return, which the wheels were put in motion for shortly after with a vignette that aired on TBS. However, as of now, there is no working plan, according to Sean Ross Sapp, to bring CM Punk back to the company. Fightful are also noting that a WWE source, this is where it gets really interesting, a WWE source indicated they would likely be interested in possibly procuring the services of Punk. Since then, reps from multiple other companies have said that they'd at least be interested in having a conversation with Punk, but aren't sure of how motivated he'd be to continue. Several on signing circuits have said they still expect a big demand for Punk if he's available, and I'm sure CM Punk, once he leaves AEW, will do multiple AEW autograph signings. He might sign some AEW product during that time, like he did after he left WWE, but I would think CM Punk would do some autograph signings. But the point being, given all the controversy and given his stature, he could charge a pretty penny for it. One source, though, close to CM Punk, said they would not rule him out wrestling again and claimed he's got the wrestling bug again. It was also stated that he's a long way from even being able to wrestle again due to his injury, and considering all of the moving parts of his AEW status, they aren't sure if he'll still feel that way when things are done. The source indicated that it has been made clear to them, at least, that options will be available if and when Punk wants to wrestle again. Fightful did reach out to CM Punk directly, but they did not hear back, as they wouldn't expect to, and I think that bit at the end's put in there to say we definitely didn't talk directly to Punk, it was someone close to him, because of course that's the assumption when people say sources close to. But there's a lot in there that's really interesting, isn't it? Certainly, I think them confirming that there isn't any litigation towards Punk, and that would imply that there's no litigation back from Punk as well. He's not going to counter-sue or anything like that. That's a positive for AEW. I think the biggest part of that, though, is the part indicating that WWE would likely be interested in possibly procuring the services of Punk, which is something that I have been saying recently. And again, that's not because I'm a scoopster. That's not because I have exclusive insider information or anything like that. I just think we've all been through a lot this year as pro wrestling fans. We've all seen a lot of stuff happen that we said would never happen during our lifetimes or the lifetimes of the people involved. The biggest assumption in pro wrestling history was that Vince McMahon would leave the company. CM Punk, ironically enough, was the person to say this, but it was true. That Vince McMahon would never leave WWE until he was dead. Well, we're seeing the company run. They're doing their quarterly earnings report and calls today without Vince McMahon. Vince McMahon retired, resigned in scandal. We never thought that would happen. Stone Cold Steve Austin came out of retirement. He wrestled a match in the main event of WrestleMania this year. People don't talk about that. Cody Rhodes was one of the cornerstones of AEW, certainly one of the founders, one of the founding members of AEW. He's back in WWE right now. My point being is that crazy things have happened this year, and you really, truly cannot say, you can never say never in pro wrestling. It's cliche, I know, and people roll their eyes when they say that, or when people say anything can happen in WWE and anything can happen in pro wrestling, but it can. We've seen it this year. So to talk in absolutes, to say CM Punk, he's never gonna wrestle again, I just think is naive and short-sighted. You can say CM Punk's not going to wrestle again this year. That's factual. He's not going to wrestle again this year. He tore his triceps a couple of months ago. He had surgery. He's still got a brace on his arm. He can't wrestle until, at the very least, midway through next year. Who even knows what the situation is going to be with his contract around that time next year? The assumption would be they'd have negotiated a buyout of his deal at that point, but who knows? Things can take a while. Lawyers get involved, agents get involved, other parties get involved, non-competes could be a factor. We know that's a sticking point between both parties right now, and the reason, in my opinion, why that's a sticking point is because CM Punk knows I could go back to WWE. CM Punk knows, and actually, he wants to go back. He wants to keep wrestling. As I've said before, I would be stunned. I know that if he gets bought out of his contract, he's going to get a lot of money. He's a very wealthy man anyway, but certainly he will be because he's still got multiple years left on his AEW contract, and he'll get paid all of that and maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit of a severance package because of the negotiations of his contract. But still, he won't want this to be the way that his pro wrestling career ended. He still loves, whether you like CM Punk or not, he still loves the business. He still loves pro wrestling, and he won't want the way that his career ended is to be, I disappeared, basically, from television. I won the title, and then I vanished because I got in a fight, because I had backstage beef with people. He won't want that to be the way his career ended. He'll want to go back and wrestle once again and go on his terms. Heck, even maybe there's 2 main events of WrestleMania now because it's across 2 nights. Maybe he can get that WrestleMania main event that he was always looking for. Anything's possible. So I think he'd go back to WWE if the opportunity arose, and I know WWE's going to have to want to be interested, and when I say WWE, Triple H is going to want to be interested, and reports suggested that this summer, Triple H wanted nothing to do with CM Punk, and even less to do with Phil Brooks. But that was this summer. Things change, people change, circumstances change, and if you can make money and do damage to your competition at the same time, anything's possible. So don't expect CM Punk to be back in an AEW ring. Don't expect CM Punk to be in the Royal Rumble next year or anything like that because he won't even be healthy in time. But come the summer of next year, the summer of Punk once again in WWE, you can't rule it out. You just can't. And as the report mentions, he might have the wrestling bug. Remember, he was so sour on pro wrestling because of WWE, of course, for a really long time. But he came back, and whilst he may not love the politics of it, and whilst he may not have loved the people he was working with in AEW, he loves wrestling. There's no doubt about that. And he proved he can still do it, and he can still do it very well. And ironically, maybe WWE is the company for him right now because it is a company with a little bit more structure in it than AEW. You know, yes, you've got scripts, and yes, things can be a bit rigid, but they're certainly not as rigid as they were when Vince McMahon was there. And CM Punk can be left alone to do his own thing, and all of that. I would say there's politics in WWE, certainly, but you know, maybe the inmates certainly aren't running the asylum as much as they are in AEW in comparison to WWE. And maybe that's what Phil Brooks needs, a bit of structure in his life. You know, he's a straight edge guy and he likes to play things by the book. So wait and see when it comes out. Now, speaking of Punk, and I guess it kind of does lead into this here, on Wrestling Observer Live, Brian Alvarez has said the following, quote, "Yesterday, I was told something big is going to happen on the show, Dynamite, and you know, it's going to be one of those things that everyone's talking about." Now, didn't give any update on to what that could be. My suggestion, or my guess, rather, would be that it's the Elite returning. They teased it last week. And AEW, to be honest, isn't like WWE in the sense of WWE will air a vignette for 4 or 5 weeks, maybe a bit longer than that, and then you'll have the arrival. Let's take, for instance, Bray Wyatt. Those teasers were going on for what, at least 3 weeks, 4 weeks-ish? AEW doesn't really do that. They'll do a tease 1 week, and next week they'll pay off. That's kind of what they do. So I wouldn't be shocked if the closing scene of Dynamite is the return of the Elite. They were backstage last week, AEW, they were under 1 million viewers last week. They was basically on 1 million, but they were under 1 million viewers. I guess their hope would be that this Return of the Elite could pop a number, or at the very least it could pop a number next week. We're still, and I guess the hope would be too, that there's still time to go between now and Full Gear. So if they come back tonight, then they could be on the Full Gear card, and that could have some momentum for that event, which, to be honest, heading into Full Gear feels very, very cold right now. Yeah, we know what the main event is. We don't really know any other matches. I think a tag team title match, we know. But even the main event feels somewhat cold because we don't really know the build to it. We know MJF, is he or is he not a good guy? That's about it. And having the Elite on that show, I guess, would give some buzz to it. So I think the reason people would be talking about it a lot because it involves the Elite. It will open up the conversation about their return, about CM Punk. I don't expect Punk to be there or anything like that. I don't expect that to be big. As far as anything else, I can't think of anything else that it would be, realistically. What big free agents are out there at this point? You know, I cannot think of anything like that. Maybe a Ring of Honor TV deal. People would be talking about that. But we'll have to wait and see. Of course, though, we'll cover it here on the channel. Don't you worry about that. Let's talk about Hangman Page. We've got a bit of an update on Hangman Page and his recovery from his concussion that he suffered a couple of weeks ago. Certainly was a very scary ending to Dynamite. Tony Khan, AEW President, CEO, Head of Creative, has opened up regarding the serious concussion suffered by Hangman Adam Page on the October 18 edition of AEW Dynamite. Page sustained the injury during the main event against Jon Moxley on the episode, in which the AEW World Championship, of course, was on the line. Page dropped to the mat after a King Kong lariat from Moxley, and the match was called off after doctors checked up on Hangman. It's not currently known when Page will return to in-ring action. Obviously, we'll have to wait and see if we get any real updates in terms of a timeline of his recovery, but AEW owner Tony Khan discussed the injury while speaking on the First Coast News on October 21, where he said, "He's doing really well. I talked to him in just the past 24 hours and also saw him not long after he was officially cleared and saw him after he came back. Not long after we took him to the hospital and he got out. It was great to see him in good spirits that night. About 90 minutes after he got hurt, he was smiling and feeling pretty good. That's about as fortunate as we could be given that he got knocked out of the match. I thought the referees and the doctor handled it really well. That's what you have to do in a big fight. If one of the fighters is hurt, you need a referee that's going to come in, do the right thing and stop the fight. The doctors took care of him, got him out of there. I thought John handled it well in his interview. He was very classy, and once they safely got Hangman out of there, we saw going forward it's going to be Jon Moxley versus MJF. As I mentioned at the time, I thought, considering the circumstances, I actually think AEW, and this is a rarity because they've handled incidents like this actually very badly in the past. I think it's a positive that they learned positively from it. There have been numerous incidents in AEW's history where, and this is pro wrestling, but people get knocked out in the ring and they go limp, and we've seen in the past AEW not handle that properly, or the referees not handle it properly, or the talent not handle it properly. I thought the way they handled the Hangman Page situation was excellent. I thought they did a fantastic job. It's never ideal to end a match like that, and sometimes it can be a disappointment, particularly in a main event match, particularly in a World Championship match, particularly in Jon Moxley's hometown, and a World title match they've built to for several weeks. But the health and safety of the talent is the priority in that situation. And they didn't know how serious it was or wasn't with Hangman Page. So I think the referee, I think it was Paul Turner, was the referee for that match. I think it did a tremendous job getting Dr. Sampson in as soon as possible. Dr. Sampson called the match off immediately, and they took care. They removed the bottom rope and they got Hangman Page out of there. And I think they did a fantastic job in that. And I think they learned from incidents in the past where they got it massively wrong. I think of Matt Hardy. I think it was Alex Reynolds who got knocked out in the ring. I think it was on an episode of, it might have been Dark or Dark Elevation. I forget, but it's always tough to watch. So I thought they did a good job with that, and I also think they did a good job of improvising that finish as well afterwards, where MJF teased he was going to cash in and then he didn't. I thought that was really well done, because for a second you thought, oh, was this part of the whole thing? And it wasn't. So I think they deserve a ton of credit, and most importantly, it's good to know that Hangman Page is on the mend, but we don't know when he's going to be back. Tonight on Dynamite, Chris Jericho is going to be defending the Ring of Honor World Championship, because it's an episode of Dynamite, so we've got to have a championship match. We've got multiple. But a former Ring of Honor World Champion has teased being the challenger for current title holder Chris Jericho. Tonight on Dynamite, it will feature a Ring of Honor World Championship match, but Jericho's opponent is a mystery. Fans have been speculating speculating on who Jericho's opponent will be, and one name has popped up often. That name is Davey Richards, who had his 321-day reign with the championship. During an appearance on the Battleground podcast, Richards discussed the possibility of challenging Jericho on AEW television. "I'm just taken aback by it," Richards says. This sounds like such an arrogant move, and I hope people know me enough by now to know that I'm not an arrogant person, but if it's anyone but me, I feel like people are going to be disappointed. I'm so blessed there's not been such a, not upheaval, not uproar either, but there's been such a vocalization like this should be Davey. Richards is blown away by the amount of fans rallying to see him go one-on-one with the Ocho for a world championship in 2022. Man, wow, for people that still want to see me do that, that's so cool, man, Richards said. That's motivation. Richards currently performs under the MLW banner. He is also set to be featured on NWA Hard Times 3 card on November 12. He'll be putting the MLW National Openweight Championship on the line against Colby Corino. It won't be Davey Richards tonight. I mean, I would be really surprised because if it was him, he wouldn't be doing interviews talking about how it should be him. So I don't expect it to be Davey Richards. I think there's a chance it's going to be Jerry Lynn. Honestly, I think the fact that Chris Jericho dropped a pile driver on Jerry Lynn a couple of weeks ago would imply it might be him. I know Jerry Lynn's retired, but I could certainly see that. Jericho did open it up to all former Ring of Honor champions, not world champions, so pure champions, tag team champions, and I guess that opens up a lot of territory. So it could be a lot of different people. If it's someone fairly obscure, that doesn't make a ton of sense. So I'm going to say maybe Jerry Lynn or someone like that. Imagine it was Punk. It's not. But we'll wait and see. And of course, we'll cover that tomorrow as well. Renee Paquette recently signed with AEW, and Tony Khan has spoken about how great it is to have her on the team. She's appeared as a mainstay of the show, appearing in backstage segments interviewing AEW wrestlers, notably MJF Live last week on the stage in front of the crowd. Now, Khan has opened up on Paquette's role in the company, discussing what her signing has done for AEW. Speaking to Tommy Dreamer on Busted Open Radio, Dreamer said that Paquette has made a difference for AEW because the shows flow better and things are allowed to breathe. To which Khan replied, "I totally agree. I do think that's the case. Since she came in Toronto about 3 weeks ago, I think it's been outstanding. I totally agree with you that these last 3 weeks that Renee has really helped take the show to another level. We've seen a lot of great segments, both live interviews and interviews backstage. Tonight in particular, I'm really excited for a sit-down interview with Dr. Britt Baker, DMD, and Saraya, and they are both going to talk to Renee." To say that she's taken it to another level is Tony Khan hyperbole, to be honest, and that's what he does. He's in promotion mode. When he does an interview, he just circles in background to a plug for the show on TBS tonight. Renee Paquette does a great job, and I think she's a great signing for AEW. And as I said, long term, I think she's going to be that Mean Gene-like figure. I think she will replace Tony Schiavone in that element, which I think is right because Schiavone wears so many hats in the company, and he's a commentator, he's an interviewer, backstage and in the ring. He's also in talent relations. He's a producer. He does so much. And to have Renee Paquette take a bit of the burden off him, I think is a good thing. And Renee Paquette is very well known. She's excellent at what she does. She's an excellent interviewer. She's a pro. And she's got a huge reputation as well. So I think that she's an excellent signing. To say she's taking the shows to another level, I don't know. I don't know if Renee Paquette even really can in what she can offer to the broadcast. I think Renee Paquette can be a massive asset to AEW, but as I mentioned, I think it's Tony Khan hyperbole, and that's what he kind of does in interviews. Finally, Jim Ross has given an update on his health. Of course, he's had numerous health issues over the last decade or so. And Jim Ross, of course, has been battling skin cancer since he was first diagnosed in October of last year. He announced that he was cancer-free in December, which we all celebrated. But the road to recovery is not always a straightforward one, unfortunately. He's had some negative news this week. Ross, who is 70 years of age, has consistently updated fans throughout his journey, and he has received incredible support from fans, peers, and AEW and WWE along the way. In his latest update on Twitter, he said, "My first wound care appointment today lasted an eternity. Not all good news, but nothing I can't handle. I'm told I'm looking at 6 more months of healing. Looking forward to Atlantic City for Rampage Friday night on TNT. I'm booked at AEW." Now, the WWE Hall of Famer took nearly a month off during the initial treatments, but has since shown his dedication and love for his work and broadcasting by continuing to be a part of the AEW product. Even though the travel has been painful for him at points, he's even set up different points. He's had to use a wheelchair to get through the airports. Last week, JR confirmed that he has started some treatment to aid the recovery process, which he had hoped was going to speed up the healing. Ross has been primarily working on AEW Rampage as of late. It's a decision the company made to help the Friday night show grow, and something that the veteran commentator said he was, quote, happy with. I think whilst they're saying that, it's about growing Rampage, and I'm sure having Jim Ross call it is good for it, but it's not really affecting the ratings. I think it's a case of phasing Ross phasing Ross into not being on the main product, because he might want to retire soon. And most importantly, my prayers and well wishes go out to Jim Ross. The fact that he's still doing commentary at 70 years of age, and people can say, well, he's not the Jim Ross he was in the Attitude Era. Of course not. He's 70 years of age, but he still does a very good job, and his voice still means something. He's still Jim effing Ross. So I want Jim Ross to live forever. That's just the way I see it. So there you go, guys. That's the latest AEW news for you. Be sure to smash a like on the like button. Be sure to subscribe, bottom right-hand corner. Let me know your thoughts on today's AEW news stories in the comment section below, and I'll speak for you again very, very soon. Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.